There's a specific kind of person, and if you've stumbled onto this video, there's a real chance it's you, who will drop everything to help a friend through a crisis at 1 a.m. and then lie awake afterwards convinced they're fundamentally broken. They'll pour into other people like there's an endless supply of them, and then look in the mirror and feel nothing good. This isn't a coincidence. The kindness and the self-hatred are not two separate things happening in the same body. They are the same mechanism wearing two different masks. Let me explain what I mean. When children grow up in environments where love felt conditional, where affection came and went based on behavior, mood, achievement, or just whether the adults around them were having a good day, they learn something. That love is something you earn, and the fastest way to earn it is to become indispensable, to make yourself useful, to be the one who gives, because giving feels safer than needing. And what that does over time, it rewires what care looks like in your nervous system. Giving stops being a choice. It becomes almost compulsive. Less I want to help you and more I do not know how to exist in a relationship without serving a function. The kindness looks selfless from the outside. From the inside, it often feels like running from something. Psychologists call the version of self-concept these people carry negative self-schema, a deeply held cognitive framework where the self is understood as fundamentally flawed, undeserving, or less than. What's particularly interesting is that this schema doesn't prevent warmth toward others. In many cases, it intensifies it, because if you genuinely believe you are not worthy of good things, the only socially acceptable way to feel like you matter is to make other people's lives better. You become the emotional infrastructure of everyone around you, the one who remembers birthdays, who checks in, who notices when someone's not okay. And you're genuinely good at it. The problem is the internal accounting happening underneath. Every act of kindness is quietly being tabulated as proof that you have value. And when the kindness isn't reciprocated or isn't noticed, the balance tips back toward that familiar place of worthlessness. A 2013 study published by Laura Aknin and colleagues found that pro-social spending, giving to others rather than to yourself, was associated with greater well-being across cultures. And that's real, that's not made up. But what's almost never discussed in the coverage of that research is the motivation behind giving, because giving from security feels different in the body than giving from scarcity. One is an open hand, the other is closer to a transaction you entered into hoping someone wouldn't notice you were desperate. People who hate themselves tend to be exceptional listeners. And I think about this a lot, why that is. Part of it is that someone who has spent years believing their inner world is unworthy of attention becomes extraordinarily attuned to the inner worlds of others. They've had to be. Reading a room, sensing shifts in someone's mood, anticipating what people need before they ask. These are survival skills that get dressed up as emotional intelligence, which they are, genuinely, but they developed in the context of having to manage other people's emotions to feel safe. There's something quietly devastating about that when you sit with it long enough. What tends to happen, and you might recognize this, is that the self-hate operates as a kind of underground current. It doesn't announce itself loudly. Instead, it shows up as an inability to receive compliments without deflecting, a weird discomfort when someone does something for you, that faint suspicion that if people really knew you, not the version of you that shows up and helps and listens and gives, they'd leave. And so you keep giving, because as long as you're useful, there's a reason for people to stay. Here's where this becomes genuinely complicated, and not in a way that has a clean resolution. A lot of people who function this way don't actually realize they hate themselves, because the self-hatred doesn't feel like self-hatred. It feels like being a realist. It feels like humility. It feels like knowing your place. The story isn't, I hate myself. The story is, I just don't think I'm that special, or I'm harder to love than most people, or I'd rather focus on other people because my own stuff is boring. And the surrounding culture affirms this constantly. We celebrate selflessness. We call it noble. We make it a personality trait to be admired. So the person running from their own pain into other people's lives gets told over and over that they are good, that they are so giving. And those words land somewhere strange because they're simultaneously exactly what that person needs to hear and completely beside the point. The question that tends to crack things open for people, and I've seen this, not just theoretically, but in what research on schema therapy and attachment consistently shows, is when do you feel most deserving of love? Most people who struggle with self-worth will tell you it's when they've done something for someone, when they've been helpful, when they've fixed something, and almost never just because they exist, just because they showed up. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this conversation. There's also a specific kind of grief that lives in these people, one that almost never gets named. It's the grief of having been an adult in a child's body, carrying emotional weight that wasn't theirs to carry, learning to suppress their own needs so thoroughly that by the time they reach adulthood, they genuinely can't locate what they want anymore. Ask them what they need and they'll deflect. Push a little and you'll sometimes see something flicker across their face that looks like panic, because needing something opens a door, and the last time that door was open, it didn't go well. I want to be careful here because I'm not saying that people who are kind and also struggle internally are broken or operating out of pure dysfunction. Humans are layered than any one narrative allows. Someone can give from a wounded place and from a genuine place simultaneously. The warmth is real. The care is real. The love they have for the people in their lives is absolutely real. What's also real, they deserve to give that same quality of care to themselves. Not as a project, not as something to earn, just because they're a person. The shift when it happens tends to be slow and non-linear, and sometimes uncomfortable in ways that are hard to predict. Because when someone who has built their entire relational identity around being the giver starts to let themselves receive, starts to let themselves need, it can feel wrong. It can feel selfish. It can feel like losing a version of yourself that, even if painful, at least felt familiar. Recovery from self-hatred doesn't look like waking up one day and loving yourself. It tends to look like a very long, ongoing argument with yourself where slowly, incrementally, the voice telling you that you don't deserve good things starts to lose ground. If you recognized yourself in any of this, and I mean really recognized yourself, not just in a vague, yeah, I guess I'm kind way, but in a this is uncomfortably specific way, that recognition is worth something. Most people spend their entire lives running from the pattern without ever noticing it's a pattern. The fact that you can see it, even partially,